meeting.
Hello.
My name is Councillor Barbara Blake. I am the chair of this committee, and I'm a Seven Sisters Ward councillor. So if members can introduce themselves, starting on my left, please.
Councillor Throton Hill.
George Dunstall, councillor for Stroud Green.
Lottie Collett, councillor for Woodside.
Pippa Connor, councillor for Muswell Hill.
Sue Jameson, councillor for Bruce Castle.
Tom Bevan, councillor, Northumberland Park.
Amina Ibrahim, councillor for Knoll Park.
Thank you. If the officers present could introduce themselves, please.
Heidi Sprott, Principal Committee Coordinator.
Matthew Barrett, Legal Services.
Rob Szosowski, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Robbie McDocker, Head of Development Management.
Valerie O'Key, Principal Planning Officer.
And Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
Thank you. And if there are officers, other officers will introduce themselves if they're in attendance virtually when they're required. So we're on to item 1, which is filming at meetings. This meeting is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting. Item 2, which is the planning protocol. Members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2, which is on the agenda pack. Item 3, which is apologies. We've had apologies from Councillor Worrell and Councillor Emery, and Councillor Connor is his substitute. So welcome, Councillor Connor. This is in accordance with Committee Standing Orders 53 to 56, and Councillor Bartlett has just let me know that she's running late, so she's hopefully will be here soon. Item 4 is urgent business. We have no items of urgent business. Item 5, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? Councillor Ibrahim.
Just regarding item 8, just declaring that I'm the councillor for Knoll Park Ward. I'll be viewing the item with an open mind.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on to item 6, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December. Do we approve these minutes? Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, Councillor Bartlett and Councillor Brennan, can you just introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, yeah, apologies. Nicola Bartlett for West Green Ward.
Councillor Brennan, Muswell Hill Ward.
And do you have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. So we're now on to item 8, which is the land at Haringey Heartlands. That's in the pack, and it's pages 19 to 126. I'm not going to read out the proposal because, as I said, that's in the pack. The recommendation is to grant, so I will hand over to Valerie to introduce the application. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Chair.
The Reserve Matters application is for the approval of reserve matters relating to appearance, landscaping, layout, scale, access pertaining to buildings H1, H2 and H3, forming phase 4, including the construction of residential units, commercial floor space, basement and new landscaped public space pursuant to planning permission HGY 2017 3117 dated 19th of April 2018. This is also a supplementary report to be read in conjunction with the main report, which includes additional comments. This slide shows the site location plan, bird's eye view of the site, and site allocation plan. The bird's eye view shows the site as a whole highlighted with the former gas holders in the background and Mary Noyner Road to the west and terrace houses on Hornsey Park Road to the east. And to the northeast is Wood Green Shopping Mall and to the east is Coburg Road. The site location plan highlights in red where the Reserve Matters application for buildings H1, H2 and H3 will be located on the site. And the site allocation plan shows the overall Haringey Heartlands area, which this application forms part of. And you can see adjoining sites coming forward, such as Iceland's, which had a resolution to grant, and the former petrol filling station on Mace Road, which has an extant planning permission. And the land behind Iceland and Bitton Place, which are expected to but have not yet come forward under site allocation 21 to the north and east of the site. This slide shows the illustrative master plan, which breaks the site up into 4 distinct zones, the northern, southern, western and eastern quarters. The detailed element of the hybrid planning permission comprise the southern quarter, which is phase 1 and 2. So it's buildings A1 to A4, B1 to B4 and C1. And the remaining residential units of the hybrid planning permission form the outlined element of the hybrid consent, which will come forward as reserve matters. The first, second and third approval of reserve matters within the outline permission were for buildings D1 to D4 and E1 to E3 within the eastern quarter, so that's phase 3A and 3B. And the northern quarter within the outline permission is the next phase to come forward as a reserve matters, phase 4. And this reserve matters application focuses on buildings H1 to H3. And the western quarter will come forward at a later stage. As members are aware, the hybrid consent was approved in April 2018 and included 1,714 residential units, 10,417 square metres of employment floor space and 22,750 square metres of basement. Phase 4, located in the northern quarter of the Clarendon Square development, is highlighted in red. And each building plot is controlled by a set of parameter plans and design codes which control the scale and massing which can be controlled on each plot. As members are aware, the matters established by the hybrid consent were principle of development, development specification, which is number of units and uses, quantum and tenure mix of affordable housing provision, the indicative master plan, parameter plans defining heights and scale, and design codes. And this slide shows some of the design codes for the H buildings. This slide shows the approved illustrative master plan with phase 4 highlighted in red. Note how the buildings in phase 4 are taller in height than the rest of the buildings. The approved hybrid application agreed the overall parameters of the site's development. And this is the master plan ground floor layout of buildings H1 to H3 and the public square, which formed the outline consent. The approved illustrative master plan is one way in which the scheme can be developed. So the proposal includes a total of 377 residential flats. Building H1 comprises of 162 flats, Building H2, 100 flats, and Building H3, 115 flats. And the housing mix comprises of 85 studios, 108 one-bed flats, 176 two-bed flats, and 8 three-bed flats. And overall, there are 34 wheelchair accessible units. So Building H2 has 13 units and Building H3 has 21 units. And the proposal includes 2 stories of commercial floor space, which comprises of workspace, restaurants, and a tap room. And 2,916 square metres of basement, private amenity space, private communal amenity space, an arcade, public square, and landscaping. And Building H1 is a 27-storey landmark tower. Building H2 is 14 to 17 stories, and Building H3 is 14 to 20 stories. This slide shows the affordable housing update. The hybrid consent requires 32.5% affordable housing provision by habitable rooms across the whole development. So to date, 1,101 homes have detailed reserved matters consent, of which 47.4% is affordable by habitable rooms, which is 54.1% of shared ownership and 45.9% of affordable rent. The 44.4% figure includes 145 market sale homes converted to additional shared ownership homes through support of the GLA. Without these homes, the scheme currently delivers 36.1% affordable to date. Should Phase 4 reserve matters be consented, there will be detailed consent for 36.9% affordable homes across the site, which is 28.1% if the 145 converted homes are not included. Based on the illustrative scheme approved by the Hybrid Permission, another 399 homes will come forward for reserve matters approval on the site after Phase 4. And there is therefore sufficient capacity in future phases to ensure 32.5% affordable home requirement of the Hybrid Permission can be met. Working through the floor plans of the buildings, starting from the basement for Phase 4, 15 blue badge spaces are provided, highlighted in the darker blue. And 4 further blue badge spaces provided after the completion of Phase 5 are highlighted in the lighter blue. And the refuse store, cycle store and plant room is also located at this level. This is the ground floor plan. Building H1 is the standalone building, whilst buildings H2 and H3 are linked. And the public square is located on the southwest corner. And the arcade is a semi-covered space between buildings H1 and H2. And the restaurant, tap room, highlighted in blue, fronts onto the square and arcade. And the residential lobby corridor is highlighted in yellow. And the workspace is in purple and plant refuse area in grey. The workspace will have a frontage onto the arcade, Silsoe Road, with the workspace lobby area fronting onto Coalberg Road. And service infrastructure will face onto Silsoe Road and the internal service road that was approved under the previous reserve matters for the E buildings. This is the proposed first floor plan, which comprises a further workspace highlighted in purple across all 3 buildings. And there are also 2 flats located at this level of buildings H2 and H3 highlighted in orange. This is a typical floor plan. So 62% of the flats are dual aspect. In respect of all 3 buildings, there are 4% north-facing single aspect units compared to the maximum 10% set out in the design code. And buildings H2 and H3 provide access onto a podium level terrace at second floor level. This is the 10th floor. Buildings H1 provides access onto private communal terrace at this level. This is the 10th floor. Building H1 provides access onto private communal terrace at this level. And then this is an image of the communal roof terrace on the 14th floor of buildings H2 and H3. Each private communal terrace will provide play opportunities and seating areas in communal garden settings for residents of all ages. In regards to the communal terrace on the 14th floor, planting has been designed for wind mitigation that will help shelter the play space and seating beyond. We have added an additional landscaping condition to this Reserved Matters application. This is the public realm proposed. And the square is an important piece of public realm at the heart of the master plan. In terms of access arrangement, the primary pedestrian route is highlighted in red. The dotted red line highlights the secondary pedestrian route, and the primary vehicle route is highlighted in blue. And the dotted blue line highlights the controlled vehicle servicing road, and the dotted green line highlights the primary cyclist routes. And the yellow rectangular box highlights a new bus stand on Silsoe Road, and the purple highlights the bus driver welfare facilities. This is the landscaping proposal. The key public place includes new public realm being provided will be carefully landscaped and where appropriate, incorporate lighting, planting, seating and other features. The public square will be a lively and exciting place in front of the restaurant taproom units at the base of buildings H1 and H3, creating a space for cafes, tables and chairs to spill out onto the footway. Potential evening uses such as a public house and further commercial town centre uses will be delivered in phase 5. An avenue of large mature trees along the northern edge of the site along Coburg Road is proposed, which will continue to contribute to the street trees. Medium-sized trees along the new lane and the arcade will lead into the square, lining the east and west edge of the central open space. Medium and small trees are planted in the square. This is a view from Maze Road. A number of long and short distance views were submitted with a proposal to demonstrate that these proposals will look elegant, well designed and appropriate for its emerging town centre location, surrounded by other developments likely to be of similar scale and significance. Buildings H2 and H3 is linked with the predominant material a lighter and darker brick to integrate with the predominant master plan character, and the design will also include elements to reflect buildings H1. Building H1 marks the square and is an important link from the square to Coburg Road, and was always intended to have a material palette which included reconstituted stone to express its landmark and more civic commercial character. This design also includes elements to match building E3 to the south, which was approved under the previous Reserved Matters known as Phase 3. Consistency amongst buildings H1 and H2 and 3 include similar banding, a crown of the same proportions and more similar composition. This is a view of the arcade from the south. This image to the left is a view of the arcade from the square. The concept of the lightweight semi-covered feature is from the industrial heritage of the site. Refer to the image on the right, which shows the frame of the gas holders and other characteristic industrial architecture, and the lighting integrated into the semi-covered feature is to the arcade space. This is a view of the site from Mary Noyner Road. The base of the building is treated differently, and also the crown is expressed differently to create lightness to the top of the tower. And you can see the communal terrace on the 10th floor of building H1. This is a view from the southwest corner of the square. The base and crown of building H3 is also treated differently. This also applies to building H2. And you can see the shared communal terrace of building H2 and H3 on the 14th floor, as well as the communal terrace of building H1. This is a view from the southeast corner of the square. Active frontages on both sides, consisting of building entrances and a variety of commercial uses, will enliven this route, providing a safe and vibrant pedestrian experience. In terms of daylight and sunlight levels to the proposed residential accommodation is an improvement to the illustrative scheme of the hybrid consent. The impact of the proposal on neighbouring dwellings will generally addressed satisfactorily in the hybrid consent, as the areas of the illustrative scheme that would not get access to good daylight are not significantly increased, only affecting a part of the ground floor and a very small part of the first floor, with the expectation being these floors will be in non-residential use. In terms of the wind assessment, the differences between the detailed proposal and the illustrative scheme considered for blocks H1, H2 and H3 are not expected to significantly affect the suitability of wind conditions for existing and proposed activities in and around the site, and the conclusion of the October 2017 environmental impact assessment are considered to remain valid. And this wind assessment has been reviewed by a third-party expert who are broadly satisfied by the findings. Any residual issues can be dealt with by condition. In terms of other matters, transport impacts were addressed in the hybrid permission and substantial public transport improvements were secured. TfL will provide a new bus route 91 and 232 through the site along Mary Noyner Road and Coburg Road, and sustainability is dealt with by condition of the hybrid permission, and a detailed cultural strategy was approved as part of the hybrid planning permission, and an update to the cultural strategy is included with this reserve matters application. In summary, the proposed reserve matters is in accordance with the parameter plans and guidance established at the consented hybrid planning application, and details of the submission comply with up-to-date planning policies. Accordingly, the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll bring in Robbie McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make members aware that we've had a late objection at close to 7:15 this evening from Park Marlvin Residents Association. So you have an objection from earlier today in your addendum pack. We've had various correspondence with the chair of that today, raising those points. I've invited them to speak if they wish, but they hadn't registered in time, but we were willing to give them some flexibility on that at the chair's discretion. But they haven't come forward to do so, but have submitted an email again seeking a deferral of the decision. They say they have serious concerns, but the points they've outlined are the engagement on the application, that there hasn't been a residents group meeting on this, and that St William haven't sought to engage with them on this application, and the thresholds of the parameters have been exceeded, and that their residents group should have been notified. So I think the response to that really still stands in the addendum, that a consultation did take place with several hundred residents, and a site notice was erected around the site. So members of that group will have been made aware through direct letters. The applicant carried out their pre-application engagement with a meeting on the 8th of February prior to submission, and a more recent meeting in October where they met with Park Marlvin Residents Association. And I think in terms of the parameter plans being exceeded, that's noted to have been amended through a non-material amendment, and that's set out in your pack. So there's nothing in that that would change our recommendation away from approval towards a deferral, and the response in the addendum stands.
Okay, thank you. So are there any clarification questions, please, for the planning officer? So I've got Councillor James.
Right, so I'd like to know about the garden at the top, because when we saw the model, I mean, just looking at that and remembering the model that we saw the other day, I want to know, when we've got these high gardens on the tops of very, very tall buildings, how tall are the walls? Do they go up? Do they have a flat surface? Do they have a slant? You know, do they have a sort of slant surface? Those sorts of things. How tall are they? Basically, how dangerous is it being up on a, you know, in a roof garden? That's essentially my concern.
Councillor Jameson, I can bring the applicants in, but I actually want the planning officer to answer those questions first.
Yeah, so the wall on the 14th floor terrace, on the terrace is 1.5 metres, which is standard in terms of height for a terrace. And this has, the height of the wall is used in other terraces within the Clarendon Square development on the buildings that have been built.
Can I reply? I mean, that's not entirely reassuring because I mean, I don't know what it's like using a garden like that, but I would imagine if the walls are really, really high, then it really impedes on the feeling of it being a garden and the space. But on the other hand, I don't know, it just feels that they feel dangerous. I mean, looking at it on the picture on there, where it being flat like that, if it was a corner, if it was up but then a corner, making it less climbable and less, you know, dangerous, really.
Chair, yeah, I think if we could bring in the design officer, Richard Truscott, just to talk through that.
Okay.
Yes, Councillor, I don't think I mean, Valerie said 1.5 metres is standard. Actually, it's quite a bit higher than the minimum. The building regulations say 1.1 metres would be sufficient parapet height or guarding height to prevent someone being able to climb it. So I'd be confident that it wouldn't be climbable, whilst not. And I think it would provide quite a bit of enclosure, a sense of enclosure. I mean, a garden that is walled is normally regarded as a nice form of garden, but it would be sufficiently the right sort of height to provide that sense of enclosure, provide some wind protection and so on, whilst still providing the potential for views out. And actually, the one on the one on the 10th floor on H1 has got large sunbathing decks overlooking the square. I think there are some in more sort of clustered form, which you can see in the plan on the 14th floor terrace to H23, as well as the ones that cluster around the play area, and there's two areas off to the right as well. So there would be some potential for people enjoying the view, especially the longer view, whilst also feeling secure, I think. I'd be very confident it would be very secure.
And Chair, if I may, we have condition 2 on page 72 of the pack, which is prior to occupation landscaping details. I think quite often we'll see in these spaces, although not in that section, if you build the landscaping in around that perimeter, then that creates a sort of soft buffer on that edge. So you're not up against a hard wall, and also means that it's harder to get to that edge. So that might be something that the applicant may want to incorporate. So I could suggest that we amend condition 2 slightly, just to include the words including safety measures, so that we have some clarity on that when that landscaping comes forward.
Thank you. Councillor Dunstall?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to come back on the Parkside objection or concerns. Just kind of given the size of this development, it doesn't feel like we've given a huge, like there was one consultation for 5 weeks in which no comments were received. That's fine. No, then the applicant has done a pre-application engagement, which included an exhibition of what was going on. Is that standard for a development of this size? It's a big development. There's two sort of a short sort of consultation period and then one exhibition thing. So is that standard? And the second question would be, in what ways was that exhibition that was done by the applicant promoted actively to the community?
Yes, so the standard 21 days would be what we would give to a reserved matters application, and in reality there's been longer than that, with that consultation ending in October, and we're now in January. We would have accepted any comments after that period. In this case, there is a fairly regular liaison with that group. There seems to be some dispute about how often that is, which is, I think, is at the heart of their concerns. But to have a pre-application engagement event and one post-application, I think goes beyond what we often see. This is a reserved matter, so the scope of the application is quite limited. So to me, that's proportionate, and gives people a reasonable chance to have their say.
In terms of the exhibition, it detailed the proposals for Phase 4 and consisted of 11 booths, which was prepared by architects, the landscape architects and cultural strategy consultants, containing a whole list of information. And then residents were given the opportunity to feedback on the proposals and to put forward names for the new public square as well.
Thank you. I guess my question in regard to that was more like, in what ways was it actively promoted to that kind of immediate community? Like, great, once they walk through the door, there's loads of stuff, but how do they know they've got to walk through the door?
Apologies, Councillor. Yeah, I think that's a question for the applicant. Parkside Marvin residents were aware of it, so it succeeded on that front. But in terms of how that was done, the applicant could answer that when it comes to them.
Okay, so I will bring the applicants in a bit later. I just want to get through these questions. Councillor Bartland.
Thank you. A couple of points. In the addendum, I think it's Appendix 1, where it talks about the council's independent wind microclimate consultants, and it says that they might need information. I was just a bit confused. Does that mean then that we are accepting that should they need more information and mitigation, that is then sorted out afterwards, or how does that work? Two other quick points just on that letter from the Residents Association, where they say that they got in contact on the 10th of October and then there was a meeting at 4 p.m. on Friday. Was that 4 p.m. on the Friday just gone? And if so, like what was the delay? And just finally, I may have misunderstood this, but in the conditions it talks about it being car-free development, but there's also mention of car parking places. Is that because it's changed in between the outline permission and then this particular planning permission? Thanks.
So on the wind mitigation, there's a dispute about some of the inputs, and we feel that the two consultants have got close enough that they're within a few miles per hour of wind speed, so that's within the scope of something that can be controlled by the condition and further mitigation in terms of landscaping and things like that. So we are anticipating that should they not agree on those inputs and points of clarification, it might change the scheme slightly, but there's scope to do that within the landscaping conditions and that condition we've recommended in the addendum. But broadly, in terms of things like safety, we're a long way from that. There's just some issues, and the applicant has brought their wind consultant with them this evening if you do have any further questions on that. And in terms of the meeting on Friday, that was just with council officers. So there was some delays in setting that up. I think we were approached in late October, November to set that up. It took a while to get a response on that, and then we ran into Christmas time, so we were only able to set that up this side of the break. But obviously, in that time, the applicant had engaged at the October meeting, so there had been a chance to present the scheme to them. And Maurice, are you happy to take the question on car capping?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Committee. Maurice, Transport Planning Manager for Haringey. So there's a slight change in the number of car parking space being provided, but the general kind of policy in terms of DM 32 for these type of developments is that we state them as car free or car capped. What that means is that the developer can provide parking, but they're not allowed to apply for any on-street parking spaces. So in terms of this development, the majority of the spaces are for wheelchair accessible units, which complies with the London plan. But residents who move in will not be able to apply for parking permits on the local roads.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Bevan.
I think my points have been answered. I was just concerned about that 10th of October request for a meeting that didn't happen until last Friday. And then I think the wind issues are still basically to be decided. And if it turns out it's not acceptable, changes are to be made.
So yes, in terms of the dates, I've avoided getting into the details in terms of the exact dates, but I don't know the exact gap from when we were approaching the 10th of October. I know it was at least November before we had a response on that. So that did create some of the lag in that. And it took us until early January to then pick that up again after that. So it has been a bit of both. But as I say, the residents group had a chance to see a presentation on the scheme from the applicant. So, we're aware of the detail, and the consultation had been open and closed by that period. And again, on the wind mitigation, it's really about terraces and the ground floor. So that's usually mitigated through trees and landscaping or screens. So, we're not anticipating that the buildings would need to change substantially to accommodate compliance with that.
Councillor Connor.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I have a number of brief points that I appreciate an answer on that. So one is the around the communal space on page 47, which is noted in the application that there's going to be this sort of space in these tower blocks. I wasn't sure how that was going to be utilised. There was no mention that I could see around any developer thinking about how this space would really work for the residents. There would be a number of young people and children within this development, and there's a whole, there could be an exciting array of possibilities for that usage, but I didn't see anything. And my concern is obviously that once it goes through, it'll just be an empty room that eventually will get locked. And then won't become useful. The second point that I had was around connectivity. So there's not a lot of green space in this development. I sat on a number of the proposals around Tottenham Hale, and that area is now quite concrete when you go and visit. And I've had people complain to me about wind going through Tottenham Hale. So I'd just like to know if the council has actually gone back and done any retrospective looks at what the wind speeds are and those developments, because obviously this is going to be part of a much larger range of tower blocks that are going to be coming through. So I'd like to understand that. In regard to connectivity, we've got Wood Green Common just further north. I didn't see anything in these plans to indicate that the developers would be ensuring that there would be a really well-developed, safe walk space for, for pedestrians to access, because obviously there's nothing other than those gardens on the top of the roofs, which I'm not sure how that's going to work. So I think just we've got green space, but it doesn't seem to be any plan about how we use it. Ali Pali is right across the way, but with the railway line right in the way, cutting that access. It's so frustrating. I don't know if there was anything around the whole developers all putting some money together to sort of think about, and somewhere else in this document, it did mention an underpass under a railway to access green space. So I'm just asking here, is there any opportunity for that? There could be some thought about how Ali Pali could be accessed for young people and the residents in this. And finally, one very small thing, there was something about a single access road, and they said it was going to be one way and that the vehicles would have to sort of buzz and work out how they go up and down this. They said there could be up to 60 during the day, there could be 60 vehicles trying to get up and down into this space. I'm just wondering how that's going to work and whether that would work in sort of reality, because obviously if one truck gets it wrong, everyone else gets stopped and it backlogs out onto the main road. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll take those, Chair. Thank you. So I'm not 100% clear on which spaces you're referring to on page 47, but if I've understood, it's about the sort of commercial ground floor spaces. Is that what you mean? Or do you mean communal amenity spaces?
I thought there was a communal amenity space, but in one of the tower blocks, definitely it said, I can't remember now, on, I don't know, floor 10 or something, there was going to be an area for people to be able to access.
Yes.
I just misread that. Okay.
So there's communal amenity space on the 10th floor. So that's for the standalone building. So that's block building, sorry, H1. And then there's communal amenity space for buildings H2 and H3. So there's this communal terrace here. And if we go to this typical floor plan, there's actually also a podium terrace between H2 and H3 at this level. So you've got 3 terraces, and you've got 2 on buildings H2 and H3 and 1 on building H1.
And in terms of green space and the master plan, with a master plan of this scale, there has been spaces put aside. So there's the park on Hornsey Park Road for residents, which the developer has put in place and is open at the moment, and water features has recently been opened in that. In terms of links to Wood Green Common, this square provides a north-south link for residents to be able to access that, and further work can potentially improve that and enhance that. And Wood Green Common itself is going to soon be the subject of a planning application. I think I submitted actually coming forward for determination for improvements to that space, in part funded by wider developments in the area. And I think in Tottenham Hale, there's a planning application hopefully coming to the February committee for works to the green space at Downend Park, and that's been funded by the surrounding development. So in that case, that was pulled together to fund enhancements to that park to support the development. And there are further spaces and squares coming forward. Tottenham Hale's not quite finished yet. But in that case, it was developers pulling together. In this case, you've got the sort of mitigation in green space on site. And in terms of access to Ali Pali, the applicant has already paid a substantial contribution to improve that tunnel beneath there, the railway, to improve that access. There's some difficulty delivering that with Network Rail withholding their consents and just making things slightly difficult for the team that are delivering that. But you know, there are a lot of things built into this to ensure that residents have a good level of amenity. And I'll pass on to Maurice just to comment on those transport concerns.
Yeah, sure, Chair. This application was subject to a service and delivery plan. I think the trips you've highlighted in the service and delivery plan is quite common for a development of this size. We will try as part of that plan to make sure we can consolidate some of those delivery in terms of concierge service and other bits and pieces we can do on site. It's quite common for development of this nature to have a one-way system. Within that one-way system, there'll be loading bays, and this will be managed by St. Williams. So this will be a managed service and arrangement. We don't have any issues with the kind of layout of that was approved earlier. We've seen the detailed design, and we signed off on a lot of that detailed design already. So it's quite typical, 60 movements per day. I mean, if you think about 60 movements per day, even over an hour, that will be 1 per minute. If you start looking over a 10-hour day, you know, it's insignificant in terms of the number of movements. There will be other loading bays also on Merenuno Road and on Celso Road, which will provide for servicing of this development proposal. So in general, we've looked at it as a comprehensive kind of site-wide delivery and servicing plan, and we're happy with that. And I think there's a further condition on this application to make sure we get more details to sign off on it.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, can I come back on one point? Sorry, did you want to say something?
Sorry, just going back to, thank you, Maurice, just going back to the communal amenity space that Robbie was talking about. Yeah, so if you look at this site-wide block plan, it's quite helpful because you've got Hornsey Park here, which is in yellow, and you've got lots of, within phase 2, which was one of the earlier phases, you've got numerous communal amenity space in between the buildings. And also within phase 3 as well, you've got, again, numerous communal amenity space at ground floor level, as well as this application where you've got a public square, again, with amenity space.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that in Tottenham Hale, I appreciate that a lot of this, it sounds like, is to be actually done. But I do remember as councillors sitting on those committees, and we were assured about all this green space, and have to say when you go there at the moment, that's not the reality. So whilst I accept that developers are hoping that that's going to be the situation, these communal areas are often, in my experience, sort of tarmacked, and there's some benches there, which is great, and some plants, but it's not really a child's play area. So the bit that I was asking, Chair, is is there any ability within this for the council to ask that there's an improved pedestrianised walkway between this development and the what was I saying? Not Ali Pally, the other one, Wood Green Common. Yes, thank you. Just to ensure that if people did want to access that, because that is available at the moment, and years down the line when all these other spaces come in, but it would be helpful to know if there's a way of getting increased access to that and a safe pedestrianised pathway through.
Thank you, Councillor. So I agree it's really important that this development sort of fits in with the wider area and people can access the opportunities within. So just to add on what Mr. McKnocker talked about earlier in terms of some of the improvements going on, it's worth mentioning there is some wider work being led by the Regeneration Service of the council, specifically because this is an area with a lot of development coming forward and the need to improve open space and the access to it. So it's an active live stream of work. So the badge that's been given is called Adaptive Wood Green, and there was some engagement over the summer on that, and it's partly using council capital money, but it's also using community infrastructure levy, which is money from developments just like this. So just to give you a flavour of what's under that umbrella of Adaptive Wood Green, it's helping fund 3 school streets in the local area, improvements on Maze Road to build on the work that's already been done on the Maze Corner pocket parks, as a pocket park has already been installed as part of the routes through the local area. Also improvements to Caxton Gardens, which is another bit of green space just adjacent to the development site. And also Wood Green Common is specifically in there, and Barrett Gardens as well, which is the other bit of space on the side. So part of this is funded by developments. So this development, the wider scheme and this phase pay community infrastructure levy, and some of that money that's already been collected from this scheme and elsewhere in the local area is already being used for these projects, specifically to improve links and access. So I don't think we'd be able to require anything extra that isn't already recommended. So hope that gives you a bit of a flavour of some of the other work that's going on in the area, which is part funded by development.
Chair, for me, it's probably worth noting that the Haringey Sill for this is projected to be around £8 million. So that doesn't necessarily specifically go to that project, but that is going into that pot of capital projects. And I just didn't address your question on wind and at Hale Village. So we have looked back at that, and the issue there seems to have been the smoothness of the facade. So that's created some of those downdrafts that people are experiencing, and we're continuing to press the developer and Hale Village about putting in place a mitigation to address the issues there. In this case, it's a very different building. It's not got winter gardens or that sort of smooth facade that building had because of issues around train and road noise. So quite a different proposal. So we're not anticipating that issue here, and the consultants have got to a place where we're broadly satisfied that a substantial issue like that's not going to occur here.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Brennan, Councillor Rice, and then I'll bring you back in, Councillor Dunstall. So Councillor Brennan, please.
So we're aware that there are two businesses just very close by to this development. They're not right in size phase 4, but they add to the cultural character of the area. And I just wanted to know whether in the run of encouraging this development, we are encouraging how we are encouraging the people who are developing this to include these cultural. One of them is the collage arts, and one of them is the brewery. And what are we doing to encourage them, the developer, to include them at reasonable rates so that they don't feel that they're priced out, even if they're offered space? Is there any, I don't know what we're doing to just retain the character.
Thanks for that. So yes, the cultural strategy aims to deal with that issue by looking at ensuring that the spaces that are provided could accommodate these uses. So Goodness Brewery are an option for the tap room at the northern side of the square, and I understand discussions are underway with accommodating collage arts in the earlier phase of this development. So there's nothing in the 106 that secures the rent levels and enables them to go in for a less than market rate, but those discussions are underway and hopefully close to being able to provide a space for them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check on this. At the start of this discussion, the number of newly built homes were presented. I can't remember the figures, but what I want to find out, how is the allocation across the piece in terms of affordable homeless? In other words, does Block A get X number of affordable homeless? Block B, is it even out, or are we getting a situation where you get the people who can afford and privately buy live in one block, and the people who can't afford and privately buy live in another block?
But if you did give the figure for the number of affordable homes, which I think have been delivered in previous.
Yeah, and you were asking how it's allocated. So phase 1 and 2. So phase 2, the affordable homes are shared ownership. So that's run by L&Q. And in phase 3, which is block D4, which was one of the reserve matters that was approved, one of the blocks that was approved under reserve matters, that would be for social rent. And that's the block that the council would acquire.
Any of these blocks which have no affordable housing in them?
Yes, there are. So in phase one, that's private, and the phase that I presented today, the H1 to H3 blocks, they're all private, and the previous reserve matters application for the E blocks, which is phase 3, they were all private as well.
All this private letting, how is that going to assist us bringing our homeless figures down?
So, Councillor, in this case, a lot of the affordable housing has been delivered already. So there's a 32% overall affordable housing provision, but so far, I think that's at 47% on what's been delivered so far. So that they're exceeding that in their earlier phases. So those are the low-rise blocks, the more suitable to family accommodation, whereas this phase is a tall tower, less suitable for residents in affordable housing. So it's 100% private. So overall, the entire master plan will hit that target, and there is now a council block that will be included in that since the agreement to purchase that. So looking at this in isolation, it is purely private, but that's because the affordable is elsewhere. But again, those have been 10-year blind, so you wouldn't be able to distinguish those from the private blocks. They're all of the same high quality.
Councillor Dunstall, and then I want to bring the applicants in.
Yeah, thank you. You may feel like you already answered this, but it's a sort of follow-on really from Councillor Connor's inquiries. Just that main public realm space is a very hard landscape space, and I'm just wondering, you know, in an area that is highly urban, and I know you cited a number of sort of small green spaces, but they're not on the doorstep of this block. You know, what scope there would be to, you know, incorporate more, well, grass, I suppose, as opposed to the hard landscaping that's there. Obviously, it's got a path through the middle, and that's fine. But
I think one of the main points about the square is it has to be flexible, and part of it's a key part of that cultural strategy. So it'll host events and markets, performances, things like that. So for that reason, it does need to be relatively hard. I think the earlier phases have lots of pocket parks. There's proposals to landscape Coburg Road as a tree-lined boulevard. So this sort of has to work quite hard as a space to deliver all of those things. So it wouldn't be appropriate to green it much further than it is as proposed.
Okay, thank you. So can the applicant team, I want you to talk about the consultation, please, and just make a clarification on that.
Oh, can you hear me? Hi, so I'm Annabelle Prentice. I'm the Senior Development Manager on Clarendon. So in terms of the consultation, we went out and posted 20,000 leaflets to the local community. And at the public consultation, the Residents Association said it was also on their WhatsApp group, so they were aware of it. We then invited them down in October, and we did not only a presentation, but we did a walk of the site so that they could see what we'd built so far and exactly what we were proposing.
Okay, thank you. All right. Councillor Jameson.
So the Residents Association, I wouldn't, I mean, they're objecting on the grounds of consultation. Are they not objecting on the grounds of basically how difficult it is to live with a massive development being built on your doorstep, and their views being obscured and all those sorts of normal things?
So, I mean, we've worked obviously with the council and within the parameter plans and also the master plan that was improved in 2018. I mean, we have gone out for consultation and would work with the architects to develop that master plan. We've taken on board comments and we have developed the design to accommodate as many of those as we possibly could.
Okay, thank you. And is there anyone who can just talk about the hard landscaping, if there's anything to add other than what Mr. McNaught has said, really?
I think the only other thing to add with the landscaping is so that public square was also designed in mind that we could have market stalls so that they could pop up and actually create an environment and a nice community that people, or a destination that people could actually visit. I think the other element is Hornsey Park, that is, as you can see on the screen in phase 1 on the right hand side. That is a 2-minute walk from the square and creates quite a different type of environment than what we're trying to create in this civic quarter.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Councillor Bevan then, last question.
Yeah, the service charges seem to range from £47 to £77 a week, depending on the size of the flat. And you obviously quote an estimate of what that's going to cost. Can you tell me how out of date that estimate is now? When did you work out that estimate? Was it several years ago when you were planning this development? That's my first point. The second point is I've looked at the QRP panel report, which is on page 41. I've never seen a more damning report. I've gone through that report. It's on page 41. I've marked 20 items where the QRP panel had really serious concerns. It looks to me that you pushed every single boundary on this development to get the maximum out of this site. And that, I think, has been picked up by the QRP panel, of which I recognise that the design officer has made some mitigating comments, basically, but I've never seen such a bad report as that. And then the third point is the NHS is saying this whole development will put a huge amount of extra work into their service, and they asked for a sum of money. I think it was £691,783, which you as a developer have not agreed to pay as one of your conditions. I'm asking you to reconsider that, even more so as the fact that property prices over the next year now are expected to increase and not decrease, as was the case when you was working out all these figures. So those are my 3 points. But I would ask colleagues to look at that QRP panel report on page 41 because it's absolutely damning.
Hey, I'd like to. I'd like to bring Robbie McNaught in just to answer some of your.
Yes, just to quickly cover on the NHS contribution. So as this is reserved matters, the 106 is established already. So there was no opportunity to secure that contribution, even if we felt that met the test and was necessary. You can't condition a financial contribution that's set out in planning guidance. So that hasn't been included in the recommendation, and on previous schemes we've seen we've not recommended that because our infrastructure statement says that SIL will cover NHS upgrades to infrastructure. And I think on the QRP, it's just worth hearing from Richard on that, having been involved in the master plan permission and QRPs and the reviews that have happened more recently.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to go through in detail the comments I made on the individual QRP points? I could do that, but don't want to take too long. Well,
you can pick out the salient point, please.
Yes, so yes, there's quite a number of points there, but as they said at the end of their report, they were confident that they were all issues that could be resolved in consultation between the applicants and officers, and we consider that they have been. There was scheme layout. They were concerned about such things as how close block H1 was to H2 at that time across the arcade. So the applicants have moved block H1 further to the west, further away. So the space between them is now between 12 and 16 meters, whereas it was previously, I think, 8 to 12 meters. That height and massing, well, they were expressing concern about something that had already been agreed, because the height and massing was agreed in the original application and in the non-material amendments from a couple of years ago. But we did, at the QRP's request, secure additional long, medium and short distance views of the scheme, which you can see in the design access statement. And we think that they demonstrate the scheme would be of a good quality and appropriate for the location. There was some concern about the character and quality of materials, which seem to come down to things like the use of stone, reconstituted stone, rather than brick, and the concern that that might be more susceptible to graffiti. Well, we're very confident that the applicants have a very high standard of site maintenance that will prevent graffiti either appearing or staying on buildings. And it was always intended that H1 would at least include an element of stone to mark its more civic and commercial character and to mark the location on that key square. So that was always intended. There was some talk about the wider landscape master plan, in particular about the number of trees on Coburg Road, which at that stage, when it was shown to the QRP, there weren't as many trees as there are now. They managed to increase the number of trees, and there's been much further discussion about the detailed design of Coburg Road between the applicants, a couple of neighbouring applicants, the Regen team, the highways and transportation planning people from the council. That's really tied that down into a much better quality, as well as also increasing the number of trees in the central square, albeit that it is intended to be generally a hard paved, hard working town centre type square, not a garden type square. Public realm, I've covered that really, haven't I? I think I've covered most of the points. There was a big change to the to the architectural treatment to the crowns of the three towers. The crowns, that's the top 2 or 3 floors, have been made more prominent and more distinctive, more different to the lower floors than they were when the QRP last saw it, to give them a greater distinction to them as tall buildings in their longer and medium views and so on, and to give that scale of a tall building. So we're very happy with the changes that have been made since the QRP, and we consider that they have satisfied all the QRP concerns.
Okay, thank you. I think you, the applicant, you've bought the wind expert. Yeah. Could you, could you just, so there were a few questions about that, wind speeds and mitigation. Could you just talk to us about that? And
well, anything, sorry.
Put you on the spot, but yeah.
Myself, Graham Flynn from Urban Microclimate. So we did several phases of wind studies on this scheme. We started off by doing computer modelling, and then we did more detailed wind tunnel testing. And in line with the outline consent, what this is showing is that the build-up in massing from the southwest to the northeast is encouraging prevailing winds to pass up and over the development. So this is where it might be very different from Tottenham Hale, in that the way the massing builds up, it's not just the height, it's also the orientation, the exposure, and there's lots of factors that go into how windy conditions end up around the base of the buildings. So this has quite a lot of favourable aspects to it, and as I say, that was shown in the ES. It was shown again in the initial computer modelling and in the final studies. So at pedestrian level, for a scheme of this scale, conditions are actually very benign because of those aspects. And then where the kind of roof terraces were a bit more exposed, more work was done in developing the landscaping and the barrier schemes to help mitigate those winds. So that was kind of the bulk of, we ran a interactive mitigation workshop in the wind tunnel, and that focused on the terrace, achieving a more amenable space at higher level.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Can you just switch off your microphone? Okay, all right. All right, one last question, Councillor Khan.
Sorry, just following up from Councillor Bevans, the QRP comments, it's on the fire safety. So I noted in the pack, it said about the staircases and that you've increased those to 2. But then I also noticed on page 73, the London Fire Brigade was strongly recommends the sprinklers are considered in the new development. So I'm just checking because I didn't see that in the comment on the quality review panel. So I wasn't sure if you're going to put sprinklers in. Thanks.
Yes, they will be.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. So, so I'd like to ask Robbie McNaughton to confirm the proposal with a summary of any changes, please.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation is to grant planning permission, and that's as set out in the addendum, and with the amended condition 2 to include safety measures in the landscaping condition. And yes, as I say, recommendation is to grant subject to conditions.
Councillor Bevan.
I'd like to make an amendment. I'd like the developers to withdraw from this meeting and consider whether they would make that NHS contribution, or if they need to defer the meeting until their organisation can decide to come back and confirm you will make that NHS contribution. It's quite damning here. The council is a real budget issue. SEAL money is not supposed to support and facilitate the operation of the National Health Service. The council has enough on its plate without funding the National Health Service. If you don't wish to withdraw and reconsider, I would like to move a recommendation that a condition be added that this NHS funding be applied as part of this planning permission.
Chair, I think it's probably just worth advising on that. I think probably from legal, just in terms of the mechanics of whether that would be lawful or not. And Rob, would you just like to cover the detail of how SIL handles that?
I think we should ask to give the developers the opportunity to decide if they want to withdraw to consider first.
No, I want the officers to clarify the situation first, please.
Yes, it's not for the developer to offer it. It has to be in accordance with planning legislation and policy and the development plan. So it isn't for the developer just to offer it. That's what planning committee's decision needs to be based on. So we have a document called the infrastructure funding statement in Haringey, which sets out what we will. It's an adopted policy document, a governance document adopted back in 2017. So that's adopted policy, and in that it has a list of things that it says the council intends to spend SIL on, and within that is health and wellbeing facilities. So there's a general principle that if we ask for something in SIL, which we do, health and wellbeing facilities, we can't ask for it through section 106s. So it's generally not a matter of choice. And as that wasn't in the original outline permission, it's not something that can be asked for here that is arising out of just this phase. It's already been looked at as a whole for the original permission. So it's strongly not our advice that can be added on into any recommendation onto this proposal. And I'll ask Matthew Barrett, who is our legal advisor, just to add anything else onto that. Thank you.
I really can't add very much to that, Madam Chairman. Yeah, you have a SIL schedule. You have certain things that SIL covers, and you can't ask for anything more. If you wanted to amend that schedule in future, that's something you can think about. But for the purposes of today, I'm afraid, no, that is not permitted. Sorry.
So do you want to do a motion then, Councillor Bevan, or can we move on to the vote?
No, I'd like to do a motion because SIL can be
Can you explain tell me what the motion is then, please?
SIL can be allocated by the council. I do not think we should be providing and supporting and funding the NHS. So I would like to move a recommendation or an amendment, whatever you like to say, that this sum of money requested by the NHS be added to this development.
Just to be clear, the council doesn't fund SIL. The SIL is from developers. So it's by not asking for it through Section 106 now and dealing with it through SIL doesn't mean the council's funding it. It's funded through SIL, which is only from developers.
Yeah, but we decide how it's spent, and I'm saying we should not be deciding to operate and provide that whole health service out of that fund.
So that is a policy decision that needs to be done through an adopted SIL governance list. So we have an adopted policy SIL governance list. Any changes to that have to be consulted on, and then it has to be adopted by cabinet. So yes, can have a conversation about that, but for this decision has to be in accordance with existing policy and legislation. So it's not for this committee to be able to decide to spend it on something else.
I will move it, but obviously it needs someone to second it.
Is there a seconder? No. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. So we will now move to the vote. So the recommendation is to grant. So all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to the applicants. Thank you. Right. So we're moving on quickly. We're on to item 9, which are the pre-application briefings. Oh, bless me. Have you got my So, no, sorry. So we're now on to item 10, which is the Hornsey, which is the pre-app Hornsey Park Road, and that's pages 127 to 150 in the pack. So Valerie, you're going to present this again? Well done.
Do you have any way of connecting to the internet? A dongle, or could you hotspot?
I have a Wi-Fi code I could send you. Yeah.
Well, I don't mind a short break as long as it's not 15 minutes. So if people want a quick sort of, how long is it going to take you to get set up? 2 minutes. There you go, 2 minutes.
22 past 8.
So at 22 minutes past 8, can you please come back into the room? I mean it as well.
Great. Okay, so yeah, we'll share. Will you tell us?
Right, we are missing councillor Ibrahim, councillor Bartlett, and where are you? Oh, all right, go on, I'll let you come round. So who are we missing? So we're missing,
They need to be let.
right, can you go and get them back? I said it's 22 minutes past. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming back on time. Valerie, are you, you're introducing this application?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, over to you then.
Okay, so the site is located at 157 to 159 Hornsey Park Road. And the proposals for the redevelopment of the site to provide 32 residential homes and commercial floor space with associated disabled parking, landscaping and access. This is an aerial view of the site, and the site is located to the rear of Hornsey Park Road, with the entrance between two end of terrace houses. And this is another aerial view of the site, and the site is bounded to the west by the Clarendon Square development and to the north by the Iceland site. This is the site photos, and the site contains a few disused industrial buildings of 1 to 2 stories in height, considered to be of no architectural merit. And this is the adjacent Clarendon Square site to the west, which is a mixed-use development of up to 19 stories, and the site's red line boundary adjoins the Moselle Walk, which forms part of the Clarendon Square development. And this is the adjacent permitted Iceland site, also a mixed-use development of up to 9 stories. And the site forms part of Site Allocation 21, which requires redevelopment of the site with a mixed-use employment-led scheme that creates a new link between Wood Green and Clarendon Square. And it should be noted that the Iceland site falls within the same site allocation and is under separate ownership. And across Brook Road to the north is a low-rise industrial estate known as Bitton Place, which is also within the same site allocation, again under separate ownership. And this is the policy designation. And the proposal is for the demolition of the existing light industrial buildings, erection of the following: Block A, which is 6 stories, consisting of 21 residential units, which includes 3 wheelchair accessible units on the ground floor. Block B It's 5, 4 and 1 storey, consisting of 96.7 square metres of commercial floor space and 11 residential units, with a housing mix of 3 studios, 7 1-beds, 18 2-beds and 4 3-beds, a new pedestrian route, 3 disabled parking bays, cycle parking and refuge storage, landscaping provision, including child play space. The developers will now present their scheme. Thank you.
Can you put your microphone on as well, please? And if you could introduce yourself as well, please.
Hello. Yes, sorry, I'm Stephen Davey, excuse me, Director of Stephen Davey Petersmith Architects. We're the architects working on the proposal. If I go into... Okay, good evening, everybody. You'll see some of the same images that I think Valerie just showed, but we'll scoot through that at the beginning. But obviously, it sounds like we're all familiar with the St William's scheme and the adjacent Hornsey Park Road. You can see here our site in red, which sits just adjacent to the the east of the Clarendon Works site. And as Valerie explained, it sits between end of terrace properties and leads through to a wider area at the back, which currently there's some sort of mainly single 1-2 story building on the site, and it sits between our site and the Clarendon Works site is the culvert in which is the Mosel River that runs between the two. And then this shows again what value. Oh, we seem to be in a bit of a delay, actually. There we go. That shows our site in relation to the Clarendon scheme that you were just discussing, and the walk that runs down on the eastern side of the Clarendon scheme that we will be linking into. The site photographs that picks up, top left is the entrance into the site. Top right is looking back towards that entrance into the site. The middle view on the left is an area as you come into the site past the terraced houses on Hornsey Park Road, which is where we will be providing some disabled parking. The middle view on the right looks to the 2-story building that sits on the far end of the site just before the Mosel River, and the bottom left and the bottom right are views behind that building at the sort of land that sits kind of between our building and the adjoining Clarendon Works site. This is an image that, oh, we're getting a bit slow here. There we go. This is a plan which shows the orientation of the site with the sun east to west. So predominantly we're kind of largely east-west facing. The dotted line that runs through the site is a desirable route that the planners would like, which is in the site allocation, which is something we've looked to adopt within the scheme, and that links into the curved brown line, which is the walk on the east side of the Clarendon Works site. The image here shows an earlier shows the version of our scheme and how, whilst providing the access through the site, which is the large green dots, we've also used our building to act as kind of surveillance points for areas within the Clarendon Works and the adjacent scheme to the north, which is the Iceland site and the entrance to the site, so to monitor and manage that route as people pass through the scheme during the day. This is our first pre-app that we looked at for the scheme, which adopted those principles, and we were looking at sort of various arrangements of the buildings on the site. The principle was generally accepted by the team, and we were just asked to kind of sort of develop the scheme further, looking at perhaps the commercial space on the ground floor of what we call Block B, which is the northern block within our scheme, with a full residential on the base of Block A, which houses the disabled units. We then went to a quality review panel where we looked at the relationship of our site within the wider site allocation, and we were asked to produce a master plan showing how the commercial space could be provided within the site allocation within our site and the adjoining site, the Iceland site where there is already a consent, and the potential for Brook Road. During the quality review panel, it was felt from the panel that maybe our site wasn't suitable for commercial space, given the size of the site itself. And we've had lots of discussions with the planners about do we or don't we incorporate commercial space within our site. And we've settled on an area at the front of the southern end of Block B, which provides some commercial use during the day, whilst at night, for the route, there is still surveillance from the residential that also sits on the ground floor in the southern block. This was pre-app number 2, where we're looking at the layout and the organisation of the scheme. And you can just see in here, I think on the image, we had a house that sits in the corner opposite where I was suggesting the disabled parking was. It was felt that that should be removed because it was perhaps overbearing to the neighbours, which we then did. And in its place, we located the refuse store. There'd been lots of discussions in the DRP and with the planners about do we or don't we bring the refuse vehicles into the site, or do we keep it just pedestrian route? And it was felt that actually the vehicles should come off Hornsey Park Road into the site because of the issues with traffic on Hornsey Park Road, and we all know it can kind of back up there at times. And then following that, and with the public consultations that we've done, we did the DM forum with the planning team, and we carried out our own consultation. One of the key concerns for the residents was the location of the refuse store, which we then subsequently moved into the back of Block B, which you see here, the grey area. And as well as putting the bins in there, we've also had conversations with I suppose the energy team at the borough, and the idea of how eventually we could link into the energy network that's being created on the Clarendon side. The issue we have with that is that we have the Mosel River that sits between us, so it's difficult to get to. But what we have agreed is we will allocate a plant space at the rear of the ground floor in Block B, which ultimately will connect to the network when it is extended out into some of the surrounding roads, or that is the theory. So, and that moving the bin stores also freed up space as you enter the site to put a third disabled bay in there for the 3 disabled units on the ground floor, which we'd previously located elsewhere. The image on the screen now shows the current layout with the disabled spaces as you enter the site from Hornsey Park Road, a turning head that provides for the emergency vehicles and the refuse vehicles, and then beyond that is a child play space which sits just to the north of the commercial unit and opposite the residential in Block A. And then you'll see an area behind Block B, which is where all the cycle storage is located, and that's in kind of lightweight covered structures that can sit partly across the top of the Mosel, which also pushes it away from the public areas and keeps all the cycle storage private. Then going up through the scheme, we've got 1 and 2 beds in the scheme and 3 beds to the rear of Block B on this floor. And it basically, I won't go through every floor layout, but as it rises up and we go through the scheme, I think I'm going to be a bit ahead of you here, actually. I'm going to see if I can not go too far. It begins to step away on Block A from the adjoining residence on Hornsey Park Road, and Block B is the lower block, which steps away as well. And I have got a model here, which I'm more than happy for you to all kind of pass and move around, if you like. It's pretty robust. But it does show the relationship of our scheme with Hornsey Park Road properties, and also the scheme that's coming forward on the Clarendon site, and also the building that sits behind us with its consent on the Iceland site. So I'm happy to move that around. And then going forward, this again basically explains the landscape layout. I won't go through it in detail, but it explains the child play space, the amenity space, the kind of greenery we're looking at, but I'd have to go through every number, and I guess it's probably quite difficult for everybody to pick those out on the screen there. As was mentioned, there's 32 units in the scheme, 3 disabled units. There's 11 units in Block B, 22 in Block A. And these are just some of the diagrams that we've worked through with the transport consultants, Velocity, which shows the turning of the emergency vehicles and disabled parking as it enters and leaves the site. And where the refuse storage and all the refuse storage is in the rear of Block B, and shows the tracking of the refuse vehicle as it enters and leaves the site, and also that residents from both Block A and B use the same refuse store. And again, this is picking up on one of the requirements or concerns, I should say, of the local residents. And then elevationally, we're looking at the scheme of predominantly using 3 bricks. Again, I brought the samples of the bricks along here as well, and some reconstituted stone around some of the window reveals and detailing within the scheme. So we're kind of breaking up the massing, the arrangement of the blocks to kind of put some variation in the scheme without overly complex detailing. So it's a fairly calm elevation, and hopefully these show the different colours of brick and the subtlety and the different shades and tones and textures that we're looking to use within the scheme. All balconies look away from the adjoining properties, and all the units in the scheme are dual aspect as well, which is something we've worked hard to achieve. And then these, following on from these, we have trying to see if I'm much farther ahead of you, some context views where you get a sense, again, like with the model, the scale of developments that we sit between the lowest sort of houses on Hornsey Park Road and the taller blocks that sit behind as you move into the Clarendon scheme. And I think where we show the taller block on Clarendon, behind there is one of the blocks that you were discussing earlier today, which obviously isn't in here at the moment. Some cross sections through the scheme, and again relationships with the adjoining schemes. We've carried out daylight assessments on both adjoining residents and within the scheme itself, looking not only at the impacts on habitable rooms around us, but also the neighbours' gardens, and all of those reports have come back favourably. So we're confident that the scheme sits comfortably in its setting and isn't going to impact greatly on its neighbours' amenity. I think that's a quick run through of the scheme for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. So any questions from the committee? Councillor Dunstall, just keep your hands up. So, okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Couple of bits. On the QRP comments with regard specifically sort of the architecture is generic, space needs to be a bit more pedestrian friendly, and that there is scope for increased ASB in some of the layout of some of it. What specifically has been done to address that? I have a second point, if that's all right, or a second question, if that's all right. The site is both commercial and residential, and I appreciate you've had a lot of conversations back and forth about how trying to squeeze that in. The site is quite small. I'm not wholly convinced of the benefit of squeezing that commercial space in there, given the location, given how the impact that might have on residents. I'm just wondering if you could talk a bit more about what those discussions were and how you decided to go with that as opposed to just making it purely residential, I suppose. And the last bit is, have conversations with registered providers started around the social housing people taking on, and who, with whom?
Keep forgetting. In terms of the commercial space, we are well aware that it sits within the site allocation for mixed use, and there is a quantum of commercial space that is looking to be provided across the whole area of the 3 sites, and only one of them has come forward at the moment. So when we were looking at the scheme, there was a we felt a requirement that commercial would be needed in the scheme. We put that in there at our first pre-app to discuss with the planners to try and understand sort of the quantum and their preferences for the site. We had discussions around that. We took it to the QRP, and at the QRP, they felt that it would be more preferable as a residential scheme, effectively. And there are sort of merits in that, to be honest, because it is a small site. It sits behind residential units, but at the same time, there is this desire for a link through the scheme. And quite naturally, the planners felt that there was an ability to perhaps tie it in with more of some of the commercial activities, maybe a smaller unit that sits alongside what's happening on the Clarendon scheme and also the neighbouring Iceland site. But there was a lot of discussion around this, and I think at the end of the day, the feeling was, and I'm looking sort of probably at the planners here now as well, the site allocation looks for commercial space. So there was a feeling that commercial space kind of should be there in a way. Obviously, it sets precedents effectively if we move away from that. But at the same time, I think the commercial unit and the size of the unit we put in there, which is just under 100 square meters, is ideal for a small business that may add something there during the day. Obviously, at night when it's closed, we still got the residential there to give that activity within the development. But it's really a kind of policy-led thing.
Oh, okay, quickly.
Sorry, just one for officers, I guess. When was that site allocation made? Yeah, like when was it made, and should we be responding to the situation as it is now, and how appropriate it is now to have commercial space in there with the emerging stuff going on, as opposed to just pressing ahead with what was made potentially a number of years ago?
Right, thanks. Okay, can someone pick that one up?
Yeah, so there was the 2017 site allocations document that allocated that. And I would say that has sort of come to fruition largely as we expected in terms of planning permissions and things being built out. So there's nothing in terms of material planning considerations that would necessarily steer you away from that. Demand for workspace is high, and there's a prevailing concern that it's being lost and not replaced. So it is at the end of the day a balance of what you feel the best scheme is. It would be contrary to the policy that protects workspace. There are ways to mitigate that through Section 106 agreements in our obligations SPD, which allow for a compensatory payment. But getting land and space probably is the challenge for people looking for workspace. So it would really be to weigh all those things up in your consideration.
So Colette?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, both to do with access, in actual fact. So the access road into this site is relatively narrow. It appears to be, from your model, just about the width of one of those terraced houses. Am I correct? Yeah. Right. So it really is a little channel, isn't it? Yeah.
So
I do apologise. I'll leave it.
Can we just, if you can just ask the questions and then the applicant can respond, as opposed to going backwards and forward.
My concern is during the building process, what that will be doing to the residents either side and along Hornsey Park Road. I'm presuming that's the only site access you have.
Yes, site access is only from Hornsey Park Road, but there will be a construction management plan that will have to be put forward with the application of how the works will be managed. And to be honest, this isn't sort of unfamiliar in a sort of central London location. I mean, we've dealt with sites which with much tighter access than this, and that comes down to the size of vehicle that can come in and also the method of construction that you use as well. So those things can be mitigated. And if, for instance, the safeguarding of neighbours' property, if you're concerned of movement, for instance, surveys can be done as if you would do in a party wall scenario of their properties to ensure that if there is any movement from any vehicle or construction works that come through, that can be recorded and then dealt with, you know, as part of the scheme. But there will be a construction management plan which will dictate how you go about building a scheme here, as you would do on any site.
Thank you. Can you switch off your mic? I'm sorry, but it's just the way it operates, the system. Okay, Councillor Bevan, please.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First of all, are there any kitchen diners or are there any separate kitchens? How many flats will be single aspect? Will the style sort of connect with the big development behind it, or will it stand out like a bit like a sore thumb? Will you take the final scheme back to the QRP panel, and then, as there's no actual social housing, it's shared ownership, what is the estimated cost of purchasing the minimum amount of shared ownership, which I think is 25%? Because I mean, a lot of shared ownership is not actually now affordable to the most of the residents.
Can you put your microphone on? And right, hang on, just let me get control of this. So we've got, how many kitchen diners are there? Yeah, how many single aspect?
Right.
Is it going to stick out like a sore thumb? And then I can bring oh, sorry, say
Right. All the flats will have kitchen, living, diners. Yeah. In terms of the single aspect, there are no single aspect in the scheme. We've looked, they're all dual aspect, and that's brought about by the organisation of the flats. I don't believe it will stick out like a sore thumb. I think we've worked very carefully and I think sensitively to try and pick up kind of that mediation between the houses on Hornsey Park Road and I suppose the slightly more elaborate properties that sit behind us on the Clarendon Works site. And like I say, I brought samples of the materials here and there were sort of detailed elevations. The next one was, Chair, I'll be honest, I don't have any numbers with me. I can't answer the question in terms of what the price of a dwelling will be.
I'm not sure what the price would be, I'm afraid.
Sorry.
it's fine.
So we're looking at.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm James Fox. I'm part of the Trinity Group, who are the developers. The shared ownership values, we're looking probably around 55% of private sale value. So you're probably looking in the order, I would say, of a 2-bedroom flat would be somewhere around 300,000. So that's roughly about 55% in terms of value.
Have I got that right? So 25% is 300,000?
No, 50, it's 55%. So it's roughly you work on about 55% on shared ownership value.
Say 25%, the amount will obviously be less, yeah?
Yeah, of course it would. Yeah, of course it would. I wouldn't know the detail in terms of how you break it down, but effectively that's what they would retail at.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. You switch off the microphone, please. Right, Councillor Jamieson, then I'll bring Councillor Connor in.
Well, I was going to ask the same question as Lottie about, about the amount of traffic coming down Maze Road and using that tiny, I think it's a tiny entrance. And I would imagine that the occupants of those houses are not going to be happy about that. And the other question I was going to ask was about Amina's favourite question, investigating deculverting the Moselle. And what does that mean, investigations into deculverting Moselle?
Thank you,
Can
Jack.
you switch off mute?
That effectively means opening up the Mosel and turning it into an open river, effectively running through the scheme. Oh yeah, well we've had conversations with the Riversal. It's the I keep going. Yeah, exactly. We haven't looked to open it up, to be honest, because I think it's well, I know other schemes have looked at the same and still haven't come up with a way of doing it. I mean, one of the concerns it will have is if you open it up in part and then close it again, you're creating effectively like a weak spot in it where it can then flood out, which can then create issues with all your adjoining properties as well. So we haven't really investigated in opening it up because we think that creates more issues than you get from it, to be honest. Also, the boundary of the site runs down the middle of the Mosel, so we would have to get that would have to be done in conjunction with adjoining landowners as well, of which we don't have the control of. So it's not something that, you know, the majority of it sits solely on our land. We have discussed with the authorities about building over in part for the green space and cycle storage that we're providing at the rear, and we've worked with our engineer and them to looking at, you know, where we can build in relation to it, but we haven't had the discussion of opening it up because we're not in total control of it anyway.
And I think you have addressed the issue about the access onto the site in the previous question. Thank you. Councillor Connor.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the affordable housing bit. Because at 7.27 it says the affordable housing is proposed 100% shared ownership. This would not provide the tenure split required in the local plan or any provision of affordable rented housing. And I note it goes on to say that you're looking at the commercial space and whether if you took away some of that commercial space, you could potentially offer some other type of affordable housing. So the bit that I'm really interested to understand is at what point are you in these conversations? I know you've touched on this, but what point are you in being able to actually provide some affordable rented housing for this development? So that's my first question. Around the commercial space, was there any opportunity to look at community space? So if you're saying, well, you'll reduce the commercial space, but it'll be a smaller part. Well, obviously, looking at this huge development, there's a need for sort of space, you know, for the community, for young people. I'm just wondering if that's something you've discussed with officers at all. And then my final bit is the bit that I've talked about before. Actually, in your proposal, it's actually quite well illustrated here, because is the children's space supposed to be behind this block here?
The space behind is where we've got the secure cycle storage that sits partly over where I was saying the Mosel is. And if you look on the drawing on the screen here, I don't know if my cursor's going to work, but you've got where you've got the turning head for the refuse cart. Beyond that, you've got a large area with what looks like almost a kind of kidney within the middle of it. That is where all the child's play space is.
Could you use the key point?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just not particularly.
Yeah, if anybody can see, backspace sits in here.
So my question is, yes,
That's what it's like.
right. So the question obviously is going to be around sort of light to that area, because obviously there are a lot of buildings all around that. In particular, I'm just wondering about, you said you've done light studies. I'm just checking. I know you've done it for the flats, but it's just around that space. Is there going to be any direct sunlight?
Yes, that's orientated north south. Sun starts here in the day, obviously rises from there. So there's going to be light from early in the day, certainly during to afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Sorry, my question on affordable housing and the community space.
Okay.
So just on the affordable, we actually started off very early stage looking to house the affordable in Block B. And it's over the period of the last 12 or 18 months, we've had this sort of cost inflation that it really has had a quite a serious impact on the numbers. So we're now at a position where the scheme is showing on a hard line 6% and at a best line around 14% on the affordable offering. And obviously we're pushing very hard to see if we can actually get to the higher level of quantum. At the moment we've got, it's very difficult to put social in with the private because of housing associations don't want to occupy in the same building due to their own cost basis. So effectively, we're in that position now where we're at an early viability stage. We're going to be reviewing it with obviously an external consultant and negotiating that final position. And then obviously there is an opportunity perhaps to look at a commuted sum if there isn't any uptake from a housing association for the small number of units. So we have actually spoken to L&Q and they've told us that they are not very keen on a Section 106 package. So we'll see if there's anyone else who's interested in the number of units that we're offering. Community, we haven't really discussed that, have we? No, Laura, at all. And I think, yeah, I mean, at this stage, we're just looking at a class C use.
Yeah, the conversation has been with the commercial team within the borough as well. And we've looked at the kind of spaces they're looking for. And so the conversation has really always been around Class E space. Which does.
Yeah, that's what the allocation looks for, is employment space, obviously. So that's what we've been focusing on rather than community space.
I mean, as you can appreciate at the moment, suddenly schemes like this are very sensitive to cost. And, you know, we have, you know, we're finding that the viability is proving very sensitive and difficult to work. Certainly since we acquired this site 18 months ago.
Okay, thank you. So I've got Councillor Brennan and then Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Brennan?
Only one point, which I'm actually, all it is a marker that, like Councillor Bevan, I don't know whether it's just your drawings, but it does look like it doesn't fit. I mean, I have to believe you. I just don't want it to come back later and we say, my goodness, that really, it does look like it looks different, really different from the other buildings, the Clarendon site. Yes.
But we're adjacent the Clarendon site, but we're also next to the houses. So I think what we've done is try to do that transition between the two, as we have also done within the scale of development. And obviously we've had lots of discussions with not only the DRP, with the DRP panel and the chair's review, which then followed on from that when we'd made some changes to the scheme and working with the planners as well.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Yeah, just sorry, going back to the affordable. So you said between 6% and 14. What does that look like in actual numbers?
Effectively, our discussions, the viability, we're initially looking to deliver around four units. The viability is the recent viability since values have slightly sort of waned on us, and certainly on the sales values, private sales values, is sort of showing that potentially there could be a hardline position, which is lower than that 14%, which effectively means a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4.
Okay, and you're saying that housing associations obviously haven't shown interest. But at what affordable level are you talking about? Because obviously affordable can mean a range of different products. And have you had any discussions with the council as potential taker-uppers of the affordable units? It's not just housing associations, far from it, that deliver social housing. Generally, it's councils that are your best bet.
Well, we did discuss this actually with Robbie the other day, because obviously we understood that you're requiring a building at Clarendon Works behind. At this stage, we've just had a discussion with L&Q, and we got a response from them last week, because we just thought they would, be the preferred buyer. But as they're not taking up Section 106 packages, so it is early stages. So we've only spoken to one so far. So we'll, once we've confirmed what that position is and the number of units that we're able to, and that the council agree, we can get them to agree position, then obviously we'll start to either discussing it with the council as an offering, and also any other HA may be interested.
Thank you.
But again, we did say that potentially we could, there could be a sort of slightly higher offering by looking at a commuted payment, because that might generate a bit more of a higher return and capital for the council, if that was an option to go down.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dunstall.
Point of clarification, Chair, that's all.
All right, if it's a quick one, Councillor Dunstall.
Just sorry, going back onto the commercial space, Class E, just so I'm clear, that does mean it could kind of be anything really, probably not community space, but it's not kind of industrial, it's just anything that's not residential, basically.
It's not anything, it's anything within Class E, so it's obviously, shops, restaurants, cafes, light industrial space, offices, but I think nurseries, creches, little kind of health centres, that kind of thing. But I think because of the location of this site, we don't expect a number of those users to be interested. So, for example, I can't see a restaurant being interested because of the backland location. So yeah, I think we're quite open to keeping it flexible and seeing who's interested in taking it up. But I think we can see, perhaps a small kind of office might be interested, a small design studio, something like that potentially.
Class C now does just open it up to a sort of wider group than the old B class, for instance. And it does, gives you, there's the opportunity of a small nursery as well, which is kind of verging on sort of a community use.
And potentially a startup, I think we were talking about as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Connor.
Sorry, Chair. It's just because I haven't sat on this committee for a while, so I'm just checking. So obviously this is a pre-application briefing to the committee, but I note in the report it does say that this won't provide the 10 years, still a split required in the local plan or any provision of affordable rented housing. So is this something that we as a committee are commenting on at this stage, or is that something that will come up in another iteration of what comes before the planning committee? Thank you.
Yes, so in a way we have put that there to make councillors aware and invite sort of initial thoughts on that. You obviously have to be careful not to prejudice yourselves for the decision further down the line. but we wanted to be clear that that there's options and choices here. It's a limited number. You could get one social rented or 4 shared ownership. So we sort of put that as a slightly open narrative on that. And there are feasibility issues, as the applicant team have said, in terms of getting someone to actually take that on. So we wanted to make that clear. And the commuted sum is another option that is in the mix of things that you could choose to sort of show a preference for, within keeping an open mind on a future decision. But yeah, it's not a decision to be made now. We'll continue those discussions. We'll have to look at the detailed viability, get our viability consultant to review that. So there's a bit more to go, but this is a site that has challenges, and we wanted to be quite open about that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So, yep, that's it then. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you. So we're going to move on to another item. You're just packing up, aren't you? So, yeah. And thank you for bringing the materials in. I know. Do you want to have a look at the materials, Councillor Rice? Bricks. Pass the bricks. Oh, right. Okay. I made a mistake there, didn't I? I should have. Right, thank you. Thank you very much to the applicant team for that. So we're now on to item 11, which is update on major proposals, which is pages 151 to 166. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Bevan.
Well, I can't find this one, so if you can just come back to me on it. There's a plan out for the Shell petrol station at the end of Park Lane at the junction of Willoughby Park Road, N17. I commented on it ages and ages ago, and I just wondered what happened to it. If you can research that when you get back and send it a text or something.
Not a major development.
No, it's not a major.
Ah, okay.
But it's quite a prominent location.
Yes, I'll have a look at that.
Councillor Bartlett.
Sorry, can I just check on the Civic Centre what it means by a legal letter, waiting for that?
Yes, so because the council is the applicant, we can't enter a legal agreement with ourselves. So we use what we sort of would call a shadow 106. So it's a letter setting out all the provisions, and the 2 assistant directors agree to sort of sign up to that as an agreement, and that's serves the purposes of 106 on those applications.
Thank you, Councillor Ibrahim.
Has the Omega Works application just disappeared? Is it there? I can't find it.
Yeah, there's no update
No, I just wanted to know.
on that.
But is it in here?
Yeah, we fed back some concerns to the applicant, and we're waiting to hear from them on how they want to take that forward.
Okay.
It is in there because I read it. Yeah.
The page.
So, wait a minute. Sorry, Councillor Bevan.
No, I'm okay.
Switch your microphones off then, please. Thank you. Councillor Rice, sorry about that.
Not relevant this particular meeting, but what happened to the peer review? We haven't heard the results of that.
We will bring an update on the planning service peer review to the strategic planning committee, which the next meeting of that is in February. So you'll have a full report and an action plan to go through in the papers for that. So the February meeting of strategic planning committee.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Connor.
Yeah, just 'cause I noticed it was on the plan at page 158. The Grove Lawn Tennis Club, Cascade Avenue. You probably realise I'm very interested in this. I was expecting something well pre-Christmas. I'm just wondering if that's happening or if that's a further delay.
Yes, so there's been a number of extensions to the deadline on that application while we work through some of the issues around it. So most recently it's been the basement impact assessment was assessed by a third party, and that raised a number of I think that actually just took some time to get that review back, and most recently the applicant has been provided with carbon management comments and is amending their energy strategy to address those. So once those issues are dealt with, then we'll look at the overall planning decision on that and progress it to a decision.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Okay, so now on to item 12. Applications determined under delegated powers, pages 167 to 190, and that's for noting, unless anybody's got a question. Or if you have, and you think of one, let Robbie McNaughton know. And there are no new items of urgent business, and so the date of the next meeting is the 5th of February. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.